This address will be in two parts. In the first part, I will throw a large net over our emotions, how we live every day with emotions of many expressions, some explosive, some compulsive, some expansive, some creative, some exhausting, and many confusing. Emotions and the part they play in the existential fabric of our lives. That will be the first part. In the second part, I will be concerned with how religion and faith can play a part in the expression and management and maturity of our emotions. It's true that theological teachers and writers have tended to evade or ignore this part of human existence. They have figured that their task was more in the field of writing about doctrines and dogma and the scriptural fundamentalist absurdities of the Bible. And so the tendency was to steer clear of this basic part of human existence, except where those emotions of fear and guilt were concerned. The development and the management and the maturity of the emotional life was neglected. But we're going to do something more about that. Emotions are part of everyone's psychology. And so theology becomes impossible unless it embraces the therapy that so necessarily sits within it. How many times did Jesus of Nazareth say that people needed to be set free from their emotional turmoil and their emotional paralysis? How many times did he point to the goal of being made whole? How many times did he point to finding that path that would lead to the best expression of life? But we don't see the pointing finger. We don't pause to explore how we will get release from our wild emotions, from fear, from sadness, from grief. We can be swept into all kinds of mental helplessness and mental confusion. What part does your religion and faith play? In a few weeks' time, I'm going to be giving the next lecture in the Master Series on the New Faith. This address today sets the direction in which that particular Master Series lecture will take. I've been somewhat thoughtful and reflective by the ways people of religion, people who are often very much concerned about the religious niceties of life, can very quickly switch to emotions of hate and hostility, to anger and fear. And in addition to being quite overloaded with those emotions, they seem unable to control those emotions or to be able to translate them into more positive emotions. And so great destructiveness can be done. Notice that we would not intentionally hurt an animal. But we don't balk at hurting fellow human beings, even our own children. Note, for example, the appalling incidents of child abuse in this country, domestic violence in this country, violence against women in this country. So often I quote figures from the American side of the ocean, but we too have got a lot to reflect upon. Notice that some people can become emotionally outraged when I say that the war in Afghanistan is a waste of money and a waste of life. And if I say, come on, spend that money on the Australian Aborigines, helping people get hold of a better life, the answer comes back. It would be a waste of money, and so on. What place does compassion have in our emotions? What place empathy? This last week there has been a debate on whether a huge fishing trawler should be allowed to let down its huge nets and harvest the hugest load of fish ever in one drop. And we could go on about that. Rather, I'd like you today to throw your huge net over your emotions. And what would you pull in? Why, the fish that gives us greatest difficulty and distress. And what is that? What is that fish? Often it is anger, hostility, and resentment, followed by frustration and annoyance, followed by guilt, fear, and shame, or depression and disgust, sadness, grief, and loss, fatigue and exhaustion, feelings of emptiness, and so on and on. You name your emotion, they're in the net. Any one of those feelings can become the major emotion in your net. And it can become so large that it dominates all your thinking. You're overloaded with it. And what happens? What happens when you're overloaded with that emotion? Why, you tend to discharge it. It could be sadness. It could be jealousy. It could be anger. Do you let it all out? Some people say that's what you've got to do with your emotions. Don't hold it in, let it out. I have to tell you, a lot of people get hurt that way. Think again. That's not such a good psychology after all. It's certainly not a good way for better human relationships. That can be a very dangerous and destructive and diffuse spillage. So rather than expressing it outwards, do you turn it inwards? That too can be dangerous. Or over and above those two possibilities, can you control your emotions? Or do you find that when you can't express your feelings, when you can't direct those feelings, you drift and you disturb and you destroy? Any one of us can get into an emotional lather. We do. And so we don't know how to manage and control that emotional outburst. We don't know how to manage our internal moods. The emotions that get tangled or coalesced together. We don't know how to intercept our emotional upsets that destroy relationships or that become physical symptoms and sickness. We don't know how to transmute or transition our powerful prejudices loaded with emotion. How to transition those prejudices and those emotions with it into a positive collaboration or even a positive self-analysis. And so we can easily become persuaded by other people's prejudice and the swirling currents of their implausible stories help us to become equally outraged or depressed. Sometimes we describe the way we cope with our emotional flux by comparing ourselves with the birds and the animals. So the ostrich, we're told, will bury its head in the sand. We have times when we react to situations like a bull in a china shop. I've never seen a bull in a china shop, but I can imagine the mess it might cause. We can be taken completely off guard by the swooping of a magpie who clips us with its wing, and we wonder, where did that come from? Where has it gone? But we're left sore. Or we can become irritated by the yapping dog, the persons who behave like yapping dogs. And there is the entirely implausible Old Testament story where Samson caught 300 jackals, 300, and tied their tails together, 2 by 2, I imagine, and then set fire to their tails and let them run through the cornfields of the Philistines. Of course, that story is beyond belief. But it gives a telling image of the way we let our emotions run riot, do immense damage. And if you follow on that story in its aftermath, you see how our emotionality can quickly escalate and expand. Anger begets anger in return. More anger begets greater anger. Greater anger expands and adds allies to that anger, and so it goes on. Our emotions can be like Mahler's Sixth Symphony, in fact. One or two horns would have been enough. One or two trumpets would have been enough. One or two trombones would have been enough. But in the finale of that great symphony, he has 8 horns, 6 trumpets, 4 trombones, 2 harps, and an extensive array of percussion, as to say nothing of the strings. And by the way, on St. Michael's Day, we're going to have 13 horns, French horns, here in the congregation. Well, there you have it. And at the end of the 6th Symphony, there are 3 huge hammer blows. 1, 2, and 3. Mahler joins all of us in that 3rd blow to show that ultimately, with that blow, there are times when all human emotions are suspended and we're left to choose in that moment. What will come after the worst blow? So what does religion and God have to say about all this? To our emotional expression and to the spillage of our emotions and its overload. Of course, there is part of our religion says, well, of course, we ask God to forgive us. I think that's a cop-out. We ask God to help us keep control in the future. So we enter into some kind of triangulation with God instead of doing it ourselves. We ask God to show us how to be a better person. Come on. But in any case, that is called an intrinsic kind, an internal kind of religion. We're looking at ourselves. Some, however, will go to church and join the institutions of religion, the external religion. And it's a very significant part of religion as well. So we've got the internal and the external. Of course, it's important to say you don't have to go to church to be good. And indeed, you don't have to pray to be good. So where will we go? So now I'm going to do an audacious thing. Do you know, when I was a first-year student at university, a distinguished scholar and preacher came to address the university, and he said, I'm going to give you 12 reasons why I believe in God. I thought, that's too much. 12 reasons. But he gave them one after the other, and we all walked away somewhat enlarged by the experience, and then, of course, forgot. Would you believe it? I'm going to give you 12 points of the new faith that sets out how religion and faith, internally and externally, can be valuable to us in a better understanding and management and maturity of our emotions. Now, you don't have to remember. You don't have to even try to remember 12 points. So put your minds at rest and just tick them off or cross them off as I go through them one by one. Number 1, religious faith gives us a sense of being connected to something worthwhile, to something beyond ourselves, to something positive that carries, hopefully, good values. Number 1, connected. Number 2, religion brings us a sense of contentment and quietness to our turbulent lives. Sit in a church or visit Mingary each day, as many people do. Hear the stories they tell, and they say to me, sitting here brings a different quietness and contentment to my life. Number 2. Number 3, a religious faith encourages us to care about others, to exercise compassion, to be part of the good causes of care and compassion. Oh, other organisations do that too. I'm talking about religious faith is an energy that fires our compassion and care. Religious faith, number 4, calls us into collaboration. You'd hardly think it at times because we can be so divisive, so destructive. But religious faith at its best calls us into collaboration, encourages us to transcend our disputation and conflict and see the great value of collaboration. Number 5, religious faith challenges everyone. Why do we do this? That's the challenge. Because we believe that collaboration is better than combat. Because we believe that collaboration is better than violence and greed. Because we have a view of things, a world view, if you like, a view of what's good, what's right, what's better, and that's called our conceptualization of ourselves in the world. Conceptualization. We need to work out what is our conceptualization. In the field of psychotherapy, I frequently say to the people who I train there, what is your conceptualization in this form of therapy? What are you trying to do? Where does it sit in the theory of things? Same with religion. Religious faith lifts us into a different conceptualization of how goodness in the world is better than people killing each other in the world. We have a conceptualization. That was number 5. Number 6, religious faith carries a way of coping with our emotional turmoil and our emotional overload. Long before the psychologists had begun to make a serious study of resilience, the psychology of resilience, being able to bounce back, Paul Tillich, the theologian, had written about courage. In fact, he called it the courage to be. The courage to be in spite of all that would undermine our being. In spite of all the anxieties that flow around us and in us every day, we can find courage to be. And that courage keeps us alive and keeps coming back to us. Courage is continually being reborn. That was number 6. Number 7. Religious faith confirms us as a person of worth. Religious faith carries with it a positive confirmation of our self-worth. The old faith, old kind of religion, wielded that strong rod that told us that we were bad, that we were sinful, that we were tainted, in fact, by that ridiculous notion called the original sin. All of that can go when we realize that at the heart of the new faith that Jesus himself taught was that strong confirmation that each person was a person of worth. And the first epistle of Peter, if you read it, says that this confirmation is something that nothing can destroy or spoil or wither. Number 8. Religious faith points us to an increasing control over the chaos of our lives, over the unpredictability of our lives, of the tohu-bohu about which I spoke last week. Of course, we can be controlled and over-controlling, but a balanced control over our emotional life is our goal. Even after we have experienced an emotional overload, an emotional spillage, we look for a recovery of our control. Not only over our internal reactivity, but in the way of managing the external disruptions and provocations and traumas. Control is about a belief in ourselves, about the world, It is about how much individuals feel that they have a capacity to influence and change outcomes. I note that some people say all things are possible with God. God is in control. There is a view that the more you can align yourself with God, the higher powers control, as it were, the more you, the individual, can feel a sense of control over the circumstances of your life. And some will say, things I can't control, I give over to God. So there's that simplistic religion that says in, whose hymn was it? Newman's hymn, that says, so long thy power has kept me, sure it still will lead me on. A good thought, but it needs us to embrace it and own it in ourselves. Number 8 was about control. Number 9 follows from that. It speaks about consistency, the sense of the God presence being there in a consistent way, the sense of a good spirit being a consistent influence in our life. We all look for consistency in ourselves, consistency of who we are, consistency in our emotional reactions and responses. And a good theology ought to talk about this, but it rarely does. You see, compare that with the person who is wanting to be independent, but being needily dependent. The person who is up one minute and down the next. The person who is as changeable as the bumblebee. The religious faith needs to speak of consistency. Number 9, that was. Number 10. Religious faith is more than a personal concern, self-concern. It is a concern for the wider world. It is concerned that we want to have a better world. That concern remains part of a good religious faith. Number 11. Religious faith is something that can be denied. How many people say on the radio, or they write in the paper, or you meet them and they say, I'm not a believer. I have no religious affiliation. As if they're somehow superior, rather than a little bit stupid, I think. Because when you come to think of it, what is life about? We don't expect them to be a believer. We don't ask them to be religious affiliates. But look again. The same people will travel to various places in the world, and they'll stand up on the mountain peak, and they will be awestruck by what they see. Or don't rush to any conclusion about what I might say about that. I just make a comment. The same people can stand in one of those vast European cathedrals and wonder at its construction by human hands in the era in which it was constructed. The same people can be struck, I hope, by the skills of science, or by the discovery of medicine, or by the explorations of space, or even by the modern day usage of iPhones and the iPad. Of course, nothing to do with religious faith as such. But in those times of awe and astonishment, we are part of the creative energy of life. We are part of the creative energy of the universe. Call it what you like. Although at a conscious level we may want to dismiss all talk of religious faith as irrelevant. At an unconscious level, we are engaging in something deeper than our ordinary humanness. We are engaging in something higher than our ordinary humanness. So let's not be so stupid and superficial. Whatever you call it, it can happen without formal faith. But it needs faith in the self. It needs faith in creative possibilities. It needs faith in other human beings. It needs faith in creating and recreating beauty out of chaos, something out of nothing, astonishment out of our sterility and cynicism. So that was number 11. Number 12. Religious faith is about celebrating new birth. It is celebrating, as we've said again and again through this service today, it's celebrating the good things of life. Did you get that theme running through it? Celebrating all that is good and true and tender and beautiful. Of course, there is a celebration out there, we know it, that is raucous and ugly. But there's also a celebration of humanity at its very best. Celebration at our release from destructiveness, ignorance, and ugliness. Celebration of our ongoing spiritual evolution. Celebration of the roads that beckon us onto our unfolding potential. So there they are, and you've survived it. 12 ways. They're not 12 points of faith. They're not 12 items or articles of belief. They're just statements. To take it or leave it, tick or cross. 12 ways whereby religious faith plays a significant part, or can play a significant part, in our emotional awareness, expression, maturity, and management. All begin, did you notice, with the letter C: connected, contentment, compassion. Collaboration, conceptualization, coping with courage. Confirmation of people, a person of worth, control, consistency. Concern for a better world. The response of creative energy to our creative energy. And the celebration, the best part of our humanity. So take those 12 ways with you. They are positive ways whereby a new faith can get beyond the old faith of its oppression, ineffectiveness, and confusion. I'd ask you to let those 12 ways go out to people across Victoria who tonight or tomorrow will watch this address on the internet. People of New South Wales, Queensland and Western Australia, I know, will watch this. People in Canada and America, people in Holland and Germany, to people in 56 countries of the world are part of this extended congregation, united in a search for meaningful ways to live this life. So all of you, wherever you are, and you folk who are here with me today, take heart. These 12 ways, these 12 statements reassure you that a religious faith can be a powerful and positive contribution to the way you live within yourself and the way you live in the wider world. Thank you. I thank you, because I hope that you will applaud this new way. Would you applaud more strongly as part of yourself? Do it. Do it. We do need to be part of this, and if you want to express it fully and carry it with you. So now, would you please stand? And would you pause for the blessing? Now, for those of you who are visiting today, this is a different blessing that I use each Sunday. It asks us to think of God as being not a person up there, but a presence. And it asks that presence might be part of our lives in different ways, and that we might carry that presence with us. So now pause for these words, the blessing. May the God you see in all the colours of creation arouse in you a sense of awe and wonder. May the God who is a sacred presence be real to you. May the God who is a source of inspiration and courage keep calling you forwards. May your God go with you and bless you today and always.